So today in class, I threw out the famous trolley problem to some of my classmates because we were all done with our work and we were, really bored. And I started with a typical situation, right? There's 5 people on the tracks and there's a train about to run over them. And there's one person on the split track and there's a lever. You have the option to save the 5 people, kill the one person by pulling the lever, or, not doing anything, killing the 5 people, but saving the one person. And I've always thought of myself as more of a, utilitarian leaning person, not just in the trolley problem, but, in all aspects of life, right? It just like 4 or 5 is more than 1, right? So for me, I've always said that I would pull the lever, saving the 5 people, but killing the one person. And surprise, surprise, my friends agreed with me, right? They also said, like, no hesitation, they would pull the lever because 5 lives are inherently more valuable than just 1. And I feel like that's an answer that most people would make, right? Like, you would probably say that you would pull the lever to save the 5 people. Now, I know there's some people that are like, oh, if I pull the lever, then I'm, directly implicating myself by directly, physically changing the path of the train. And if you don't pull it, then it's not really your fault because the train was going to hit them anyways. But personally, I think that your choice of inaction is in and of itself a direct decision that leads to the death of, but whatever, I digress. Anyway, back to the main topic. I then changed the hypothetical, right? Because it's the big 26. The trolley problem is super old, but I changed it. So now the 5 people are still on the tracks. They're still random people, but the one person is your mom, right? Now, before I changed the circumstances, I already knew the answer, right? Who would pull the lever to save 5 people over your own mom, right? That's crazy. Everyone would choose to save their mom over the 5 people. But I think it's interesting how we often put ourselves on this moral pedestal and act all sanctimonious when in reality, when you really think about it, like all of the species on this earth, humans are the most selfish, right? And I think a quote that really hits it on the nose with this is from Albert Einstein, and it goes, quote, "Man invented the atomic bomb, but no mouse would ever construct a mousetrap," end quote. We go to absurd lengths to protect our lives, ourselves, from our enemies, but our enemies have lives as well, right? Like, we're not the only ones with something to protect. And I think an example of this that, immediately comes to mind is getting cut off in traffic, right? The person that cut you off in traffic, maybe they were out to get you, right? Maybe they were trying to piss you off and that was their sole reason. But when you really think about it, maybe they had, they were late for work, or they just got bad news from the hospital and they're worried about their loved one, right? And as much as some of us would like to, argue that we'd never stoop as low to, almost cause a traffic accident, we all know that given the right circumstances, we would do so, right? Like, we would, if our loved one, we got a call and we found out that our loved one was in the hospital, we would rush to the hospital, right? And in that state of mind, you're probably not thinking about, oh, I better check my blind spot, right? There's probably, bigger issues at hand that you can think of. And just to clarify, I'm not just talking about, cutting someone off in traffic. I'm talking about all different kinds of circumstances where we do actions to service ourselves while, inconveniencing or negatively impacting others. And, to bring it back home, I think you and I can think of some times where we acted during this past week for purely selfish reasons, right? And we're all selfish, but now that we've, established and acknowledged this fact, we can look to improve ourselves, right? Now, notice how I didn't say we can stop being selfish. And that's because I believe that being selfish is part of being human, right? It's a lot like, anger or sadness, and how they're just emotions and everyone feels them. That's part of being human. But we can't let selfishness become greed, right? We can't let it become so strong that greed starts to permeate our lives, and we can't let it grow into apathy or indifference and self-interest, right? Those are a lot of words, but they're all kind of in the same cluster of me, I don't care about what's going on, right? And we can't let that happen. And selfish feelings are something that everyone has, right? We don't need to be ashamed of being selfish. And once you acknowledge that, you can start to change yourself, right? Start to not be so ashamed, like, oh, selfish thoughts, I'm never selfish, but then you cut someone off in traffic because you're late to work, right? And instead of, doing all that and putting yourself on that pedestal and your soapbox and whatever, we can instead take our feelings of self-interest and use it to be more understanding of other people, right? Just like how I said earlier, we try to protect our lives from our enemies, but our enemies have lives as well, right? And so once you realize that you're not the only one with selfish, hi. My day was great. How was your day? Cute neighbors. But anyways, where was I? Neighbors, you're not the neighbors, your family, and you would protect yourselves. And yeah, so they have, these feelings as well. It's not just us, and we need to acknowledge that. We need to know that if I would do these crazy things to achieve what I want to achieve or protect my loved ones, then there's the big chance that other people would do so as well, right? And we need to be understanding of that. And in a world where we're so quick to judge and so quick to hate other people and say, you're wrong, or, I don't like what you're doing, I feel like we need to be the ones, me and you, right? We need to be the ones who are changing and being that understanding person, right? We need to start with ourselves, because change starts with one person, right? We need to be the upstanding example of understanding others and respecting others and giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because there's going to be a time when you are in that position and you need people to understand that what you're doing is not, you're not purposefully out to get other people. You're desperate, right? And so we need to be that person to bridge the gap between, all this hate. And if that feels daunting, right? Like, oh, I just clicked this video because it looked cool or whatever. Don't worry. You don't have to go out and do any of these crazy things. As long as you learn something from this video, I think that's fine. But one thing that I think you should at least take away, if you're not gonna, go out there and try to spread love and positivity or whatever, there's one thing that I want you to take away from this video. It's that you may commit selfish actions, but you are not a selfish person. Yeah, that sounds about right.